Have you ever stopped to think how far you would go to try to escape the routine of a marriage that no longer brings the same excitement as before? And what if, in the middle of this search for something new, you came across something so deep and mysterious that it could change the course of your life forever? Well, that's exactly what happened to Kivia. Married to Joao, a wealthy farmer, she found in the figure of the farmhand Alessandro a simple man passionate about life in the countryside, something that was missing in her life. What seemed like a simple detour soon turned into a story of betrayal filled with mysteries that neither Kivia nor Alessandro could have ever imagined. And the most curious thing of all, after the betrayal, something absolutely unexpected happened, something that turned Kivia's life upside down. What does this secret hide? A truth that could be more than she can bear, or is it all just a simple coincidence? Get ready to discover the story that remains shrouded in mystery to this day and will shake your beliefs about betrayal and the deepest secrets of life. If you're curious to find out what happens next, don't forget to like, share with your friends, and activate the channel's notifications. Subscribe now so you won't miss any part of this surprising story. Let's go! This story will surprise you with every new chapter. Kivia had always been an observant woman, with a keen eye for the details of rural life. Her marriage to Joao, a wealthy farmer, seemed solid, but behind the walls of the farm, a story of infidelity was about to unfold. Kivia never imagined that a simple farmhand could change the course of her life so much. The routine of the countryside, with its daily tasks and isolation from the city, created a perfect setting for temptations. When Kivia realized something was changing between her and Alessandro, the farmhand working for her husband, it was like a shock. She felt torn between loyalty to her husband and the irresistible attraction to the worker, who is now part of the farm's daily life. If you've ever found yourself in a situation where something didn't feel quite right, but you couldn't exactly pinpoint what it was, you understand Kivia's anguish. Infidelity, when it starts, often disguises itself as simple moments of closeness, exchanged glances, and subtle gestures. In many cases, like Kivia's, people don't realize they're sinking into something until it's too late. Have you ever noticed how a simple conversation, a caring gesture, or a lingering glance can lead to something much bigger? The emotional confusion Kivia felt when realizing her attraction to Alessandro isn't unique. Many people live the same internal struggle, trying to reconcile desires with the reality of commitment. Kivia, like many in situations of betrayal, found herself at a moral crossroads. She needed to understand what was happening, why she felt that connection with Alessandro, and what it meant for her marriage with Joao. Infidelity, as we've seen in many stories, is like a seed that, once planted, grows unexpectedly. But, contrary to what many imagine, it's not just a momentary impulse. It's the result of a series of factors that accumulate over time. The lack of attention, emotional loneliness, and unmet needs can easily transform into infidelity. What would Kivia do in this situation? Would she resist temptation, or would her desire for the unknown consume her? Kivia had always known that her marriage to Joao, a wealthy farmer, put her in a privileged position. However, her humble origins never allowed her to forget her roots. Despite the luxury she lived in, Kivia had a deep connection to rural life and would often oversee the farm operations personally. This wasn't just about keeping the business in order, but also a way to keep her feet on the ground and avoid being overtaken by pride. However, this peculiar work environment and the high turnover among the farmhands ended up catching her attention in a way she hadn't expected. Something was happening there, something she couldn't fully understand, but it was affecting her perception of everything around her. The high turnover of farm hands on the farm, something Kivia began to notice more often, seemed to reflect something deeper. It was as if, somehow, the work in the field wasn't as attractive to those seeking it anymore. But what could be happening? The lack of stability, erratic behavior from some workers, and constant team changes created an environment of distrust. Why? Even in a place with so much money and resources like Joao's farm, couldn't people stay for long? The answer could lie in the social dynamics, the pressure of physical labor, and the constant search for a better life. Kivia's story of infidelity wasn't just related to her personal feelings, but also to the very environment she lived in, an environment where emotions intertwined with routine and expectations. If you've ever wondered how external factors can influence our personal decisions, you understand Kivia's dilemma. She was living in a world that seemed perfect, but like anyone else, she was shaped by the circumstances around her. Often, turnover in a work environment reflects much more than management issues or dissatisfaction with salary. It can be a symptom of collective emotional instability, which, in turn, directly impacts individual behavior. And that's exactly what Kivia realized when observing the constant changes of farm hands on her farm. Amidst this rotation, she too began to feel more vulnerable, more likely to make choices that, under different circumstances, she would never have made. What kept her wanting to stay there, even knowing something was wrong? What were the hidden reasons behind her attachment to this scenario? When the previous farmhand left the farm, Kivia found herself facing the need to find a worthy replacement. The decision to hire Alessandro wasn't something planned, but rather an impulse born from a casual conversation where he expressed his desire to leave city life behind and become a rural worker. Alessandro, a city mechanic, had no experience in the countryside, but his eagerness to start over in a new environment was palpable. Kivia, always alert to opportunities, saw in him a chance to bring something new to the farm's routine. The fact that he was a mechanic with practical skills made her believe he could adapt quickly and even bring a new energy to the place. What she didn't know was that this simple hire would open doors to something much more complicated and profound. Alessandro presented himself as someone simple, but at the same time, full of plans and dreams for the future. His enthusiasm about leaving urban life behind and diving into the countryside routine was something that immediately captivated Kivia. He spoke with a sparkle in his eyes about life on the farm, the new experiences, and how it would be a positive change. That contagious energy made Kivia believe he would be a great choice for the position. But at the same time, she couldn't help but feel some hesitation. After all, she knew that something so radical could be more complicated than it seemed. What would it take for someone to fully adapt to such a different lifestyle? Kivia now found herself facing yet another choice that would alter the course of her life, but she didn't know how much it would change her own perception of loyalty and the values she had always held so firmly. In moments like this, we often make decisions based on our intuition, without really knowing the impact they'll have. Kivia might have thought she was simply making a hire, but the simple act of bringing a new person into her life, with a story so different from hers, put her on a path that could eventually lead to infidelity. Often, as we see in stories of betrayal, the decision to change something in our lives, no matter how harmless it may seem, can open up a series of possibilities that change everything around us. And that's exactly what started happening when Alessandro entered the farm. Kivia didn't know yet, but her choices were beginning to set a scenario that soon she wouldn't be able to control. Alessandro stood out not only for his mechanical skills, but also for the honest and open way he spoke about his past. He didn't try to hide his origins or the life he had left behind in the city. This transparency, as simple as it was, started to create a different connection between him and Kivia. She was impressed by the sincerity with which he shared his life stories, his struggles, and his desire to change. This open communication built trust, which, in an environment where relationships were often superficial, became something rare and valuable. Kivia saw in Alessandro something that might have been missing in her own marriage, a true connection, with no masks, no secrets. The offer of a higher salary was a considerable incentive for Alessandro, who saw a chance to rebuild his life in a more stable and promising way. He didn't hesitate to accept the offer, and in no time, he began to adapt to life on the farm in a surprisingly quick manner. The physical work and contact with the land, which many would consider arduous, seemed to be exactly what he was looking for. Alessandro integrated into the farm's routine with contagious energy, always willing to learn and put in the effort. Kivia couldn't deny that he was becoming a valuable member of the team. To her, it felt like he was more than just a simple farmhand. He seemed to represent a change, an opportunity to transform the dynamic of the place and even the family environment. But what Kivia couldn't foresee was the impact of this transformation. As Alessandro impressed not only Kivia but also João with his hard work and dedication, something else was happening. The way he seemed to master tasks quickly and gain the trust of everyone around him created a situation where Kivia began to see him as an unexpected ally. That connection, born from a simple conversation, was beginning to intensify. After all, how could one resist someone who demonstrated such dedication and genuineness in everything he did? Alessandro was, unintentionally, becoming more than just an employee on the farm. He was becoming a presence too hard to ignore. What started as a common friendship, with no major intentions, quickly transformed into something more intense between Kivia and Alessandro. The countryside, quiet and isolated, became the perfect setting for what seemed like a unique and insignificant moment, but carried with it an immense emotional and psychological weight. The barn, a place of work and rest for the farmhands, became the location where everything mixed: desire, temptation, and guilt. The tension between the two, which had accumulated over time, finally exploded in a moment of human fragility. In the heat of the moment, there was no more room for rationality. Feelings took control. The sound of a horse approaching, although only a possible threat, made Kivia's heart race. It was the fear of the unknown, the feeling that something much bigger was about to happen. Something that could destroy everything she had built until then. Betrayal, as many know, isn't just a physical act, but an explosion of emotions that goes far beyond the body. When Kivia gave in to that moment with Alessandro, it wasn't just a matter of temporary pleasure. It was, in fact, a manifestation of everything she had been repressing. Her relationship with João, which had seemed solid, had lost its strength over time, leaving space for conflicting feelings to take over. And it was in that exact moment, in the barn, where everything came down to the choice between what was right and what seemed like a necessity, a way to fill the emotional void she carried. It's not hard to understand the appeal of infidelity in situations like this. The search for something new, exciting, and revitalizing seems to be a response to the emotional and physical weariness that often comes with time in a relationship. As the sound of the horse approached, Kivia felt a sensation that made her question everything. For a moment, She thought that this could be the end of her freedom, the end of everything she knew. The fear of being discovered, the fear of the consequences, was palpable. Yet, she couldn't pull away. The betrayal, in this case, wasn't just about deceiving Joao, but about the internal choices and insecurities Kivia was facing. Often, people find themselves involved in situations of betrayal without realizing how they got there. They feel trapped between the desire to escape a suffocating routine and the commitment they should have to the other. This moment in the barn, seemingly small, reflected Kivia's great internal struggle, and what she would do next would be even more complicated. After the incident in the barn, Kivia felt a mix of emotions. While there was a desire to continue the relationship with Alessandro, she knew she couldn't let it affect her life any more than it already had. Betrayal, as expected, brought with it a series of unforeseen consequences. On one hand, there was guilt and regret, which followed her in every corner of the farm. On the other, there was the fear of discovery, which now felt even more real. Kivia then made a difficult but necessary decision to replace Alessandro with a new farmhand. The fact that she made this choice demonstrated an attempt to restore control over the situation, to try to erase what had happened. However, she could not erase what was already inside her, what had happened between her and Alessandro. He, in turn, was becoming a presence she would never simply forget. The farewell between Kivia and Alessandro was a mixture of emotions that made the situation even more complex. While the decision to distance him had been made for practical reasons, the emotional burden they both carried made that moment full of meaning. Alessandro, who was now about to leave the farm, seemed to carry with him more than just his tools and clothes. He was taking memories that Kivia knew would haunt her for a long time. The exchange of glances, the unspoken words, the feelings kept hidden. All of that now seemed wrapped in a veil of farewell that wasn't as simple as it appeared. Kivia couldn't deny that their relationship, no matter how brief, would leave scars on her soul. As Alessandro left, carrying with him the weight of a shared secret, Kivia was left alone with the ghosts of her choices. The decision to send him away seemed to be an attempt to put an end to it, to restore her life and, perhaps, her marriage. But, as happens in many stories of betrayal, what is tried to be hidden never fully disappears. The memories of what happened, of what was lost, would continue to haunt Kivia longer than she would like. She now needed to deal with the emotional consequences that the betrayal had brought, which wasn't an easy task. And in the midst of all this, one question remained in her mind. How could she move forward knowing what had happened? What choices would she make from that moment on to avoid repeating the mistakes of the past? Now that you've followed this story full of emotion and mystery, it's time to reflect. What would you do if you were in Kivia's shoes? Could you deal with the consequences of a choice that changed everything? Every decision we make carries weight, and often, it's in the most unexpected situations that we learn the most about who we really are. So, tell me, what do you think about her choices? Have you ever gone through something that made you question everything you believed? Apply what you've learned here to your own life. Think carefully before making decisions that could transform your reality in irreversible ways. Don't let fear or doubt stop you from acting with wisdom and integrity. If you want to continue discovering more stories like this and learning powerful life lessons, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. This way, you won't miss any new content. Let's grow and learn together, more and more. See you in the next video.